Welcome to another episode of Systematic Geekology. This is a space where we seek to create and cultivate healthy conversations between those things we geek out on and the philosophical and theological questions that often arise out of our fandoms. Like, what does it mean to be human? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? How do the stories and narratives we geek out on shape how we live in the world? We are your priest to the geeks. We aren't all ordained, but we see ourselves as mediators at the intersection of geek culture and going deeper in our faith. We don't always have to agree, but we do respect each other, and we see everyone as a beloved child of God. Everyone geeks out on something, so come geek out with us and enjoy the show.
You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
Hello, geekologists! Welcome to Systematic Geekology. We are the Priest of the Geeks, and we are here with another What's News episode where we talk all about the latest things in geek culture. As you can see from this slide, we have a lot to talk about tonight. A lot of happening in the movie and TV world right now. So we've got a new Vince Gilligan series. We have a new adaptation of Frankenstein. We have a new remake of The Running Man. And as you can tell from my headline, if you're watching on YouTube, we have a new series set in the Stephen King It universe. So a lot to cover tonight. I am one of your hosts, Kevin Schaeffer, here with my fellow geekologist, Andy Walsh. Andy, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well and always happy to talk with you, Kevin.
Absolutely. Oh, this will be a fun one. I know we got a lot to cover. And I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on, because there's at least one item on here I've not seen, but I've also been checking out a lot. So plenty to talk about tonight, but very excited. And if you are new here, first off, thank you so much for joining us. We love that you have, you're checking us out. And if you could please like, rate, and review, it really helps the show. So if you're on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe. If you are listening to this at a later time on various podcast platforms, wherever you are, it really helps. And also, you can also check out the show notes if you want to support us further and check out some of our merchandise. The link is there where you can become a member and you get extra rewards. You can support our Patreon, all sorts of fun stuff. But yes, tell your friends and hope you enjoy the show. So, well, Andy, before we get into the main topic tonight, let us do our lightning round, where we talk on a few quick things that we've been geeking out on. So I'll let you start.
All right, a couple quick things for the lightning round. I saw my daughter was home from college for a little bit last week, and we went and saw Now You See Me, Now You Don't. She and I have kind of gotten into that series as just a fun, silly action spectacle. And the third movie is more of the same. It's more of your favorite magicians coming back and doing more heists. There was a bit of an escape room vibe to this one as well, with some Inception flavor. So if you liked some of the twisty-turny action sequences in Inception, there was a little bit more of that flavor. And yeah, if you've enjoyed the first two movies, I would imagine you would enjoy the third one. If you haven't checked them out yet, I can't imagine why you'd want to start with the third one. But go and check out the first one. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, if you like stage magic and or heist movies, go for it. What else? And then I had the chance to my wife and I were in Cleveland over the weekend, just a short ride out the interstate from where we live in Pittsburgh. And among other things that we did there, I got to check out the Cleveland Orchestra for the first time, which was fun. I think I am falling into a tour. Some people tour to all the different baseball stadiums. I think I'm slowly making my way through major American orchestras and their symphony halls. So I got to check off the Cleveland Orchestra and Severance Hall there in Cleveland, which was a very nice evening out. And then we swung by the site of the childhood home of Joe Shuster, co-creator of Superman. They've got a little exhibit there set up to remember him, and the streets are renamed, so you can drive up and park on Lois Lane and check out some oversized reproductions of Superman's first appearance. And that was pretty cool. I'm not sure I've actually ever read that, so that was kind of cool to see those panels and see what those kids came up with. They had a whole scientific explanation for how Superman got his powers by comparing it to like different insects, and that I thought was pretty impressive for a couple of teenagers writing, an early superhero story. So yeah, that was fun. That I'll call that my lightning round. What about you, Kevin?
Oh, I definitely want to make it out there at some point, just for the history there, and everyone knows how big a Superman fan I am. So I would love to make it out there sometime. But my lightning round pick. So I didn't have this as one of the main topics, but we'll probably do an episode on it at some point. But I did see Predator Badlands on opening weekend and had a blast. It's amazing how well that movie works. I mean, not that surprising with the director. Dan Trachtenberg has now 3 Predator movies under his belt because he did Prey, which was excellent, the Hulu streaming original a couple years ago, and then I have not seen the animated one yet. I am going to, but what's called Predator, Killer of Killers. I am going to watch that soon. But Badlands, it's amazing how well it works because it's a PG-13 Predator movie. It ties into Alien. It does a very, very different narrative from the others, and it works so well. And even with like humor in there that feels in some ways Marvel, but not, done in a way that takes you out of it. It works really well. I had a great time. I saw that on NC Comic Con weekend and had a blast. So really enjoyed that one. And then I also, since you went to Cleveland, I did go to NC Comic Con last weekend. That was a ton of fun. I saw Will there. I wasn't able to be at our panel that Sunday because I was only there that Saturday. But it was a ton of fun. That's always a great show. Just, catching up with friends, local creators. And then I got to see the Iron Giant on the big screen again because NC Comic Con, they partner with the Carolina Theater of Durham for a mini film festival. And Iron Giant is my favorite animated film of all time. So getting to see that on the big screen was a blast. So those are some other stuff too, but those are my main lightning round picks for tonight.
Very cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we have a lot to cover tonight, so let us get on to first topic here. And Andy, what have we got? All right, Pluribus. Okay. Let's say so. Well, Andy, first off, have you gotten to watch this yet?
I have. I watched the first 3 episodes, right? We're up to 3.
Okay. Say yep. Same. So for listeners, viewers out there, Pluribus is a new series on Apple TV from creator Vince Gilligan, who is the creator of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and El Camino. He's been working in the Breaking Bad universe for really the better part of 2 decades. But before that, he was a writer and producer on The X-Files, and this marks his return to sci-fi. So the premise here is that an apocalyptic event happens, and what's left of humanity is under the control of a hive mind that essentially makes all humans that are controlled under this extremely happy. And it looks sort of like a utopia, but there is one woman who is, for whatever reason, she's unaffected. And so she remains cynical and miserable in this new world. And she wants to, break free and, return humanity to what it was, but she's now stuck in this world. Andy, let me get your thought. That's the basic premise. We are 3 episodes in. I think we'll get into a little bit of spoilers here. So if you have not watched it, maybe come back later or, skip this part because there's a lot to cover from the first 3 episodes. But Andy, what are your thoughts on the show so far?
Yeah, I have to admit, I have strongly mixed feelings about this one. It is, it's exciting to see, an original sci-fi story. That's always cool. It's kind of a first contact story, kind of not. It's an interesting take on that sort of genre of alien stories and science fiction stories. So that's very cool. And the main premise, I think is an intriguing one of, this woman who is immune to what's happened to most of the world's population and trying to navigate that and trying to figure out how to relate to this sort of hive mind that has been created out of most of humanity. That all is enjoyable. There's, as somebody with virology and molecular biology training, there were some things about, especially the first episode that I went, but nobody wants to hear me, nitpick any of that stuff. But I will say that I found it really hard to swallow that, so they receive this alien or this transmission from outer space that they determine is, not from anywhere around here. They figure out that it represents an RNA sequence. And their first thought is to just synthesize that RNA molecule and try to grow it in monkeys and rats and mice. Like, no, there are steps you could take before that to figure out what this thing is and what it does before you just, that's, yeah. So, obviously you have to accept the premise of the story and get going, and fair enough. But, and some of the other stuff, that's fine. It's TV nonsense science. That's fine. But, that one was just really hard to swallow. And just kind of, in light of everything that's been going on the past 5 years, it was hard to, again, that first episode especially was tough. The way that it kind of plays into confirming a lot of the conspiracy theories about the COVID virus, like that it was engineered, that it was, that there's something nefarious being spread in chemtrails by airplanes, like all that kind of sort of conspiracy theory stuff. I can get the appeal of kind of, exploiting that or undermine, sort of flipping the script on that and turning the conspiracy theories into reality. But that just was a tough pill to swallow for me personally. And just generally because of the way the science is handled, it just kind of has a flavor of, and I couldn't find like a science advisor for the story. It kind of has a flavor of, well, we've read an article about cordyceps fungus. We don't need to talk to any actual scientists about how biology works or how scientists do their job or anything like that. That first episode was a rough one to swallow, but getting, most of that stuff is kind of done by the end of that first episode, and the following two, I could get into the story more, the actual main themes and story that they're trying to explore. And I think, that is worthwhile, that, how does our independence relate to, the people around us? How do we connect to society? I thought it was, my favorite bit so far was, so they, they keep trying, this hive mind group of people keeps trying to take care of Carol, the main character, Rhea Seeran's character. They keep trying to just, sort of meet her every need and do whatever they want, do whatever she wants them to do or whatever she needs. And she keeps saying, oh, no, I don't want that. I want to do things the way I'm used to, and I'm independent. I want to do things for myself. And so she goes to the grocery store to pick up groceries. But of course, they've emptied the grocery store to kind of more efficiently distribute food to people. And so she's, there's nothing in the grocery store. And so she's just, can I please have my groceries back? And I'm a very independent person. I want to do my own grocery shopping. And they say, sure, no problem. And, almost immediately 27, semi trucks and hundreds of people show up to completely restock the grocery store. And while it's not exactly, how it really works, it's a good reminder of the way in which even a simple thing like feeding ourselves, we think of ourselves, even if you think of yourself as somebody who can cook and clean and take care of yourself, you cook and do your shopping and all that kind of stuff. Like, you're still dependent on hundreds, if not thousands of people to grow that food, to process it or prepare it in some way, in some cases, to ship it, to, all these different things that none of us are really as independent as we might like to think. We are all part of this larger ecosystem and larger, organism in a sense that keeps the world running. And so I thought that was a nice way of illustrating that without really having to hammer home that point too well. So those are my lows and highs on the show. What are your thoughts?
No, I really wanted to get your perspective from the scientific mind here, so it is fascinating. And it definitely, I think that pilot especially does harken back to a very pulpy 1950s sci-fi inspiration. So inevitably, the facts are going to be, kind of put aside for the allure of, good storytelling. And it absolutely plays into COVID conspiracies and was heavily influenced by that. I'm very much enjoying it. I mean, I love Vince Gilligan. I think he's one of the great storytellers in modern TV. Looking at the pilot and where it's gone from here. So I'm thinking about, the second episode and after, second episode in particular, when, after, Rhea Seeran's character, Carol realizes, okay, this is the new world. It's all taken over. She asks her companion that is assigned to her if there are others like her that have also been unaffected by the hive mind and can still think straight. and she, the companion identifies, what is it, like 5 or 6 other people who are English speaking, and has them meet. And, like, this was something, a friend was very disheartened by this encounter because none of the others are have the same way of thinking as Carol, because they're all like, well, I mean, things are really good right now. It kind of is a utopia. Let's just roll along with it. And, she's in the mindset of, what are we going to do? Let's figure this out. Do we have any scientists here? Can we, figure out a plan to save humanity here? And they're all, full on accepting. And, I could see this too, like a friend, and I kind of wanted at least her to have one ally here, because, if you're thrust into this world and, for one, millions of people die, and then for another, everyone's just all of a sudden happy, but in a very robotic way, that would be very alarming. And so it would make sense for her to not be the only, kind of sane. She is certainly overly cynical, and she's a cynical person before this event too. But still, it would be like, I do hope she can find someone to relate to, because without that, I'm wondering where the story goes from here. I trust that Gilligan and his writers have a plan here, but I almost like thinking about it more 3 episodes in. I wonder what it'd have been like if that pilot, because I really did love the pilot, if the pilot had been part of an anthology series where you get to play with different characters and you just get to throw out, wild sci-fi concepts and do a kind of modern Twilight Zone. That's what it kind of feels like. And so, because he has plans apparently for around 3 or 4 seasons of this show. And I'm just wondering where it goes from here, because if he is the only one who doesn't like what's going on and wants humanity to return to what it is, how is she going to do that without anyone else who is on the same page as her? So, I'm very invested. I'm really enjoying it so far, but that's sort of my main question. And it's a natural one to have with a story like this. But I'm in. I think Rhea Seehorn's performance too is absolutely phenomenal. And Gilligan has talked about that was one of the reasons he wrote this show was, she was in Better Call Saul. He knew how wonderful an actress she was, and he wanted her in a starring role. So she is brilliant. One thing I also want them to come back to, and I'm sure they will. So Carol is a best-selling author before this whole apocalyptic event takes place. But she, in her own words, writes mindless crap that, the masses consume, but she really did that for money, and she wants to write something that is actually meaningful and that will genuinely resonate with people, not be, commercial entertainment. And so right before everything happens, it was, I think her partner or wife tells her, encourages her to go in and write her big epic masterpiece that she's always wanted to, and put off the, big money-making series. And I really hope there's a way to come back to that in some way. Obviously industries and everything have come to a halt here, but I really want that storyline to play out, because I don't know if you saw this, but they did this with Severance as well, where they had like a book within the narrative that they made it so you could download there. They did that also with this. I got a notification on Apple the other day that you can download Carol's book that is like in the series, which, I do love the world building there and the commitment. I don't know who they hired to write that, but that is a level of dedication. And I think, to me, that is an indication that they are going to come back to this story. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, but that's kind of where those are some of the things I invested in and I want to see play out as the story goes on.
Hey, podcast fam. Want to stay even more connected with the show? We've got you covered. Check us out on Instagram and Blue Sky, where we're posting exclusive content and bonus videos and fun updates that you won't get anywhere else. From sneak previews of upcoming episodes to bonus content, our social accounts are the best way to keep the conversation going. Plus, it's a great spot for you to interact with other listeners and share your thoughts. We love hearing from you. When you follow us, it helps us grow and continue bringing you the content that you love. Whether it's a funny poll, a quick clip from today's episodes, or just random thoughts, you're feel more plugged into everything we're doing. So go ahead and hit that follow button on Instagram and Blue Sky. It's one more way to be a part of the show and keep the good vibes flowing. Thanks for being a part of the family, and we can't wait to see you there.
Yeah, I mean, you asked about, how is she going to do anything about this when she's not a scientist? Maybe, the answer to that is she writes something that is convincing to these people to, try a different approach.
Right.
And also
that's a good thought. Yeah.
And then, to your point about, her being kind of on her own, I wonder if some of that is a commentary on American sort of exceptionalism and American, highly, personal independent kind of thinking. But also, when I was looking up the credits for the show, based on the cast for future episodes, I think you're probably going to get some version of what you're looking for in terms of you'll have someone else to play off of on a more regular basis. So I don't know, I haven't read anything or anything like that. Just looking at the credits for future episodes, I think there might be something there, and I'll leave it at that.
No, I would think it will. I mean, because also that first meeting in episode 2, it was the companion only brought together other English speakers, but there are other non-English speakers in the world that are also unaffected, and and I mean, it's pretty clear that this whole like the hive mind culture is definitely hiding stuff from Carol and the others. So I'm sure there's going to be more mysteries to uncover. And yeah, I'm really interested in seeing where it goes. I also, since you brought up the grocery store scene, I loved that one. That was and also, okay, the terms of like, this was absolutely brilliant dark humor. But at the end of that episode, when Carol is just like losing it with people, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know. Why don't you just bring me a grenade to cap off the best week of my life here?" And like with a straight face, the companion goes and brings her a hand grenade that is real and active. And then the next day, she's talking with another, I guess we could call them infected, hive mind people. And she's like, "If I asked you for an atom bomb, would you bring it to me?" And he's like, "Well, I would advise against it, but I would do whatever to make you happy." And I was on the floor, I think, with that, because it was, I mean, it's dark, but that was a brilliant way to just capture what this world is like. The Vince Gilligan clearly has a vision here, and I love how he's able to, imbue social commentary and all these heavy science fiction themes. But that interaction was probably like one of the big highlights of these first 3 episodes for me.
Yeah, that was another great scene, and an excellent performance from the guy who was opposite her.
Yes, it was good. Yeah, all the acting here is wonderful. The filmmaking is incredible. I mean, I don't know. Were you a Breaking Bad fan? I grew up. I mean, I love Breaking Bad, but
no, I've not seen Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul.
Gotcha. Yeah. If you ever go down that road, I mean, prepare to have your heart ripped out, and like you'll need to watch like cat videos after. But it is just absolutely stellar TV. So I love to see anything that Gilligan is doing, and I was never really watching X-Files like when I was a kid, and so getting a taste of his sci-fi flair is really interesting here. So when you were talking about how the 50s vibe of the pilot, I was thinking, I could have seen this as like an X-Files episode, and if they just kind of glossed over that in the first 5 minutes of an X-Files episode, I would have been like, yeah, sure, fine, no, whatever. But when you stretch it out into an hour and really kind of look at the details, it's like, I'm not sure this stands up to that level of scrutiny. But this totally I could see as an X-Files episode on a smaller scale, of course. But sure. Yeah, no, it has all that DNA there. But yeah, I mean, I'm very fascinated in this show. I want to see where it goes from here. So definitely check it out if you haven't already. And I'm sure there are going to be many more themes and ideas to come out of it. So I'm really excited to see where the season goes. And I'm sure we can do a whole episode once season 1 is complete.
Yep.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, that is Pluribus. What is our next topic here?
We've got...
All right. Here we go. So, Andy, have you gotten to see the new Frankenstein yet?
I have seen this Frankenstein.
Excellent. So, I love it. This is one, I don't know if you and I have talked about Guillermo Del Toro much before, but he's one of my all-time just heroes, creative inspirations. My first intro to him, was in middle school. I remember in a theater class where my drama teacher nervously asked us if any of us had seen Pan's Labyrinth, and a couple of kids were like, "I love that movie," and we're in middle school, and like it's a very graphic R-rated movie. But she was bringing it up as an example when we were talking about costuming and set design and stuff like that, and that has such a specific vision there. So that was my intro, and then I saw Hellboy not long after, and from that point on, he's been one of my all-time favorite directors. So when it was announced that he was doing a Frankenstein movie, I could not wait. I've been following the news about it for quite some time. I did get to see this in theaters on Halloween night. You can kind of tell from my, my praise of Del Toro. You can guess that I love this movie. I'll talk about more in a sec, but I want to get your thoughts. Andy, did you get to see it in theaters, or did you check it out on Netflix? And what were your thoughts?
I had to settle for watching it on Netflix. But I thought it was very well done. I mean, it is, it has the feeling that, Guillermo Del Toro was assembled in a laboratory out of, various bits and pieces to make him the perfect director for, this film. I understand that he's been trying to do this for most of his adult life, if not longer. So, and it, the passion for it seems pretty clear, certainly in the attention to detail of all the, the props and the setting and all of that. I was introduced to the book in high school, and was a fan of the book and the story and the themes and so forth. And I thought this was a good representation. There were a few things that they that changed from the book that were a bit puzzling to me, but overall, I think it is a better representation of the novel than a lot of the other versions of this story. And yeah, I mean, Oscar Isaacs is great, and Jacob Elordi as the monster is very good. So yeah, I thought it was well done. And if you are interested in anything adjacent to any of these sorts of things, right? The classic monster movies, or other Guillermo del Toro, or that kind of gothic literature, it's a very good example of of all those things.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're familiar with Del Toro at all, you know that he loves sympathetic creatures, and this is very much that. My creative writing professor did kind of a rant about the movie, and he was like, "Why do people say that this is a faithful adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein? This changed so much." And my thoughts on that, and this is kind of my thoughts on adaptations of particularly classic literature, is I think you can capture the spirit and tone of a novel while taking creative liberties that fit your vision, because Frankenstein has been done so many times. But what I really love about this movie is it takes the essence of the novel, all the elements there, and the relationship between Victor and the monster, and it very much is done through Del Toro's lens. And absolutely, he makes significant, not only plot changes, but also in terms of how the creature is portrayed. Whereas in the book, the creature kills deliberately, and there's a lot there with examinations of revenge and humanity. And here, I think the biggest change, and that made it so personal for Del Toro, is that this is very much a story about parenthood. I mean, he's talked about it in interviews that it was inspired by his relationship with his father, and also his relationship with kids, and how his perspective has changed on parenthood since becoming a parent. And he wanted to imbue that into the story, particularly with Victor. And I've also seen one of the main criticisms, while a lot of people really love this movie, one of the criticisms I've seen in multiple reviews and analysis was that the ending felt a little rushed there, and that the forgiveness between Victor and the creature happened too suddenly. And having seen it twice, because I saw it in theaters on Halloween, and then I rewatched it on Netflix last weekend. And where I think that it makes the ending work is the entire first 45 minutes really is what makes the whole movie work, because seeing the relationship between Victor and his father play out, and seeing how the death of his mother motivated him to pursue life and ultimately allow his ambitions to get in the way of everything. But it was that relationship and Victor knowing what it's like to be misunderstood and to be an outcast. That was ultimately what brought him and the creature together at the end. So Victor dismissed the creature early on as a thing and as his creation, much like his father treated him as younger. But then once he kind of realized the error of his ways, and after the creature's journey and being, tossed aside, when they come together at the end, I think it's a really beautiful moment. And I think that arc is actually really effective and the pacing is perfect for the movie because it harkens back to everything in the first act. So that was where the movie just was a 10 out of 10 for me because it had such an emotional depth to it. Obviously, the visualization is great. The performances are great. But it was that connective tissue there and the themes that played out and how Del Toro took the essence of the novel and then made it into a sympathetic creature story and into a father and son story that it was just, it blew me away. And so it was hard for me to find any flaws with this movie. I can certainly still look at it with a critical lens, maybe pick at things, but that was where this is just, one of Del Toro's absolute best films. It resonated with me so much. And yeah, standout performances, amazing atmosphere, amazing visuals. But it was the emotional core that even in Del Toro has always been great at visuals and atmosphere. But some of his films are better at emotion and storytelling than others. So for instance, Nightmare Alley, I enjoy it, but I think it does lack a certain emotional depth, and the characters are more or less caricatures of film noir archetypes. Whereas something like Pan's Labyrinth, it's amazing and it has this lens of a childlike imagination story. I also would put Hellboy 1 and 2 up there. They're some of my favorite comic book movies, and I think they have a really good emotional story that complements the big, action spectacle. And here, very much that same thing. And so, I was actually blown away this movie. I mean, I know it is its own interpretation of the novel, but again, Frankenstein has been done so many times. I appreciated that it was distinctly Del Toro, but very much was in love with the novel too, and it just brought it to life in a way that we haven't quite seen before.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that it is perhaps faithful in spirit rather than letter, but right, and it does update things in certain ways, right? It takes the concerns of a book from almost 200 years ago and puts it into modern context. And what I thought was most interesting about that was, instead of once again harping on the playing God and should he do this, that the real crime was meddling in biology at all, right? I find that a bit tiresome. And right. So I appreciated that instead the question it seemed to be asking was not, where did he, or the answer to the question of where did he go wrong was not that he tried to mess with biology and life at all, but rather that he failed to raise his child in a sense, and that he brought this life into the world and then abandoned it or treated it as lesser or other or however you want to phrase that, and that was really what was examined. I thought was it made more sense in a contemporary setting, even though the story is set in the past. For a contemporary audience, taking up that theme in that way, I thought made it more resonant now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how that's something that could very much be applied to modern world in terms of even just societal pressures that are put on people of okay, do this, get married, have kids, etc. But then to actually treat your child with the same respect and love, and to nurture them, and that was, and again, that's what I loved about the arc of Victor and the creature here was initially, even when he was had this awe of, oh, I've brought life into this world, this is amazing, but then he still treated it as an it, and Mia Goth as Elizabeth was the first one to call him out on that and say it's not an it, it's a he. Like this, you need to treat this as as this sacred life that you brought into the world. And I loved how that story played out. And Again, very Del Toro. The sympathetic creature is a staple of his work. But yeah, and I mean, my favorite scenes were, I mean, this has already been turned into memes and everything, but that scene when the creature watches a leaf, fall down the sewer, and he's just like in awe there because he's learning everything around him for the first time. And then once he does get to meet the old blind man played by David Bradley, I love, their interactions. I love, that relationship and how that then informed the rest of his journey. So that was all fantastic. And also, fun fact too because I've read a lot about the making of this movie and the production and everything. Originally, Andrew Garfield was going to portray the creature, but then the strikes happened, everything got put on pause, and then once they got back into production, Andrew Garfield had scheduling conflicts and had to back out. But they had already prepared prosthetics and makeup and costumes for him specifically. So they had to rework everything when they cast Jacob Elordi, but they made it work. And Del Toro has talked about that in interviews where people were like, "Well, is the project going to die now because Andrew can't do it?" It's like he's like, "No, I'm going to make this happen." And he found Jacob Elordi. And hearing Del Toro too talk about the reasons he cast Oscar Isaac and Jacob Elordi, and talking about how important it was to have actors who could convey a performance with their faces alone was crucial to this movie. I thought that was fascinating to hear. So there's so many interviews I would recommend checking out. There's one the podcast he did on the Director's Cut podcast, which was excellent. And yeah, but I love this movie. There's so many. There's also a lot of religious themes to take from it. I mean, Del Toro is a lapsed Catholic, and very much brought in the imagery there more so than other films. I mean, he certainly tapped into it in other films, particularly Pan's Labyrinth and even in Hellboy and Crimson Peak and some others. But here, especially the religious themes, the father and son aspect. There's so much to dissect here that just makes it, I think one of his absolute masterpieces, right up there with Pan's Labyrinth. So yeah, I cannot recommend it enough. I think it's if you get a chance to see it on the big screen, highly recommend. But also, it's there on Netflix. Try to watch it on a big TV if you can, because it is just a visual spectacle from start to finish. And the more you can pay attention to all of the details and the atmosphere and the performances, I think you'll have a great time. So cannot recommend it enough. It was a great experience. And it also made me happy too, because the friend I saw it with, he has heard me gush about Del Toro for years, and he's seen some of his stuff, but was never into it as much as I was. And after coming out of this one, he said, "Okay, now I understand why you're such a fan." So that made me happy too.
Awesome.
Hey guys, Christian here. Have you ever wondered how you can support systematic ecology? Well, we've made it a lot easier for you by going to Fourth Wall. Instead of what we've done in the past, Fourth Wall makes everything very easy for everyone involved. Everything is in the same spot. So if you want to find a way to become a member and get access to our exclusive memberships and all the giveaways that we're going to be doing, Fourth Wall is the way to go. As well, if you want to see all the extra episodes and content that we only put to our members, that's the best way to go. Feel free to rate and review us there. You can also leave a donation or tip if that's something you're interested in. And as well, you can help support our All Reading Counts initiative that we do. All the donations that go to that go to our libraries. You're also, if you really want to, it's like, man, I really want to hear more episodes about Christian for some reason. Or even for reasons I don't understand, you want to hear Joshua more often. We have episodes listed by host, and you can see everyone there. If you have a favorite host, head that way and support the episodes that they're on. You also find a link to our YouTube page. And we may be adding some special content beyond what we've promised. Everything that was once in multiple different locations and you didn't know where to go, well, it's all in that one convenient place. If you want to know exactly where to go, the link to this will be in the description below.
Yeah. All righty. Well, let's get what is our next topic here, Andy.
Next up, we have House of Dynamite. So
this is one I've not gotten to see yet, but I love the director. I love the cast. So tell me about it here.
So another Netflix production, this time from director Catherine Bigelow, and a script by Noah Oppenheim, and starring everybody. I listed a few people here, but it is a very large cast because the story is told in 3 parallel parts. And it is the story of, a normal day in Washington, D.C., everybody's getting up and going to work. And as they are, the radar and the satellites and everything report that a nuclear missile has launched somewhere in the region of possibly North Korea or the water around it. And that's actually a big question mark, is for reasons possibly error, possibly deliberate sabotage. The origin of the missile launch is obscured. It isn't detected by the satellites that are supposed to detect that sort of thing. And so they don't know exactly where it came from. So they don't know who's responsible. No one claims responsibility. And they assume that at first that it's just another North Korean test that's going to go up and come down in the ocean and not explode. And that will be that. And it'll be kind of business as usual. And you can kind of see as events unfold, not exactly in real time, but more or less in real time, that that's not what's going to happen, that it is in fact a much more serious situation. And so we see the responses of numerous people, from folks who work in DC all the way up to President Idris Elba and Secretary of Defense Jared Harris, to the soldiers in, I believe it's Alaska, who are responsible for launching our counter missiles to knock down these kinds of things before they hit us, to the B-2 bombers that have to scramble and just kind of be on alert, to the folks who have responsibilities for continuity of government, who have to hole up in a mountain in I forget exactly where, maybe in Virginia or somewhere around there. They go into this mountain compound to make sure that some people survive to keep the government running after a nuclear strike. Right. And so you just see all these different people and how they respond to these kind of situations, and the protocols that are in place and the protocols that fail, and this and that. And so, yes, we start with one batch of folks and see their reactions to things, and the other folks kind of interweave, but in small ways. And then we get to the point where the arc has just about finished, and then it restarts again and follows a different set of people who we'd kind of seen glimpses of the first time through, but then we see in more detail their reactions, and then it goes to the same point and then starts over a third time. So there are 3 kind of 40-minute chunks that, again, not exactly real time, but pretty close to real time, following the events around this missile launch and the response to it. And I just found it, even though it kind of repeats the way that it reveals new details with each pass, and because you only see glimpses of like the president in the first 2 passes, you're wondering, what is the president doing? Why is he reacting the way that he is? And so then you finally get to spend some time with the president in the 3rd pass. Things like that help to keep it engaging, even though it is in some ways repeating the same things. And just very gripping in the sense of what is going to happen. How is this missile going to impact the United States? Is it going to impact the United States? How is the United States going to respond? That's the main question. Who's responsible? All those kinds of things that, very gripping, very engaging. Not all those questions are answered. I think that is to the movie's credit. I think that's not what it's trying to say. I think it is trying to just remind us that, this is the situation that we live in, and that we're kind of, blind or blithe to it after having lived under it so long. And yes, there are other things that seem like more immediate crises, but we still live in a world where, with a few wrong decisions and a few presses of a button, millions, if not billions, of people could be wiped out irrevocably, and possibly the human civilization as we understand it, right, could be set back very substantially. And so just trying to encourage us to remember that is a thing that exists and is real, and we could maybe do something about so that it isn't real anymore. I don't think the movie is shy about, and the creators behind the movie are shy about, that they would prefer that we did do something about it, so that we didn't live in a world like this anymore, that we weren't sitting on a house of dynamite. And so apologies if that's a spoiler, right? But I don't think it's a big shock that Catherine Bigelow is not a fan of the military-industrial complex and nuclear armament and so forth. So yeah, I thought it was a really well done movie, a really gripping movie, a nice, a scary watch for people who don't like gory or supernatural kinds of scary movies for Halloween. It was a very a very compelling kind of thriller story for spooky season, but also all year round, because it is a reality of our world all year round. And yeah, I think that's what I want to say about that.
No, I'm definitely going to check it out. I kind of missed it when it first came out, and then I heard a couple of friends talking about it. But I mean, Catherine Bigelow is great. If you know anything about The Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30, she can do amazing, grounded thrillers, war dramas. One of the great modern filmmakers. So I'm very excited to check this out. I'll probably do that sometime this week, and then I'll share my thoughts with you when I do watch it. But yes, I am very looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, we're running long, and so I don't have anything more to add. So why don't we move on to the next item on the agenda?
Sounds good. Okay, here we go. So I know this series started like right before Halloween, but because we still have 4 episodes to go, if you want to spend Christmas with Pennywise, check out It, Welcome to Derry, because that's where it's headed. But yeah, well, Andy, first off, are you at all an It or Stephen King fan?
I have not seen any of the It adaptations. I've not read the book. I'm mostly a fan of Stephen King's non-horror story. So I really like Shawshank Redemption, but not so much or things like that. So why do people like this? Pretend I've never heard any of it. What is the great thing about it?
Well, and so I am glad you brought up that too, because the cool thing about this series is it does tie into other aspects of this King universe. So there are already references to Shawshank. There's characters that pop up in some of his other novellas, but it's obviously It focused. But the kind of the premise of this series is it takes place 27 years before the events of the first movie. The book is set in the 60s, and then with the movies that came out a few years ago, directed by Andy Muschietti, who's one of the creators of this show, the 2017 one was set in 1989, and then the part 2, once the kids are grown up, it's set in modern day. So this show is set in 1962, or at least this season is, but it will go back another 27 years with season 2, and if they get a season 3. And the reason for that being is that Pennywise, who you know him as the dancing clown, but for anyone familiar with It, either the novel, the movies, or anything about this universe, it is really an alien entity that takes many forms, and the dancing clown is one of them. And it appears every 27 years in the town of Derry, Maine. It feeds on fear. It haunts kids and the kids can see it, but the adults can't, which is that is certainly something that has been done in horror many times, and is really core to this universe, this series in particular. But it's funny because I'm a big fan of the It movies. I've attempted the book a few times. I've read a lot of Stephen King, but the book is it's a brick there. So I'm not gonna lie and say that I've attempted a few times and got a little more than halfway through, and I kind of gave up. But I am a fan of the universe. The interesting thing about this series is that it has a lot of moving parts to it, because the first It movie especially, it's a pretty simple premise of, okay, you have this group of outcast kids who's haunted by an evil clown. They have to team up, and there are certainly themes and elements that make it really compelling, but it's fairly straightforward in that respect. This one, like I said, tackles a lot of elements of the wider Stephen King universe. One of the main characters in this is a young Dick Halloran. Dick Halloran is a main character from The Shining. He has this psychic ability that called The Shining. That's where the title stems from. And he is in this series as a military officer because one of the storylines is the military is doing some kind of investigation into what is supposedly supernatural happenings in the town. That is juxtaposed with another kind of loser club story where it's another group of kids here that are being haunted by monster. There's other storylines going on here. I think the title of Welcome to Derry is very appropriate because it is very much about the town here and what it does to you. And one of the other core elements of Derry, is that when you leave the town, you often forget where. So there are characters in it. There's really only one character from it in the original that stays in Derry his whole life. The rest of the Loser Club, they leave, and they, as a result, they forget about their encounters with Pennywise, and they have to be reminded of that once they return to the town. And so there's that storyline is echoed in this as well. But to answer your question about like what makes this compelling, granted, I will say if you're not really into horror, I'm not sure I can really convince you to watch this because it is very, and particularly the first couple episodes have some incredibly graphic sequences and that are very disturbing, and some that are a little more campy and over the top. But particularly a scene in the pilot that involves a kid who's introduced in the first few minutes is trying to get away from his home, and a seemingly nice family offers to give him a ride home. They turn out to be demon possessed, and there's a demonic baby that comes out of the mother and terrorizes them in the car. It's pretty terrifying, and you can because this is HBO Max, they kind of had free reign to do what they wanted here. There's a lot of other eeriness and just, very twisted material that pops up throughout the show. So not going to say this is really going to be your cup of tea if you're not already into horror. But if you are, and if you like the It movies, I think definitely check this out. In some ways, this series does feel a little bit like, okay, HBO Max is very intent on IP-driven material. So, they turned to Andy Muschietti and his sister Barbara and Jason Fuchs and said, okay, we want to make another Pennywise spinoff here. Let's see what we can come up with. But I do think the story, it really is getting better each episode. I also like that they're full hour-long episodes. You get a lot of story in each one. There are a lot of storylines going on here. So I am enjoying it. The acting is wonderful. It's great atmosphere. But yes, if you are more into the, non-horror Stephen King stuff, which I am too. I love Shawshank. I love The Life of Chuck, Stand By Me. But if you're into any of the horror universe stuff, I think you'll really like this show. I'm having a really good time with it. There's also a big exploration into the indigenous cultures that are featured in it as well. And that plays out as a major storyline here. So like I said, that's about the only thing about with the show is there are a lot of moving parts. I'm not sure exactly where it's going, but it's getting better and better each episode. And I'm very invested into it, and I want to see how it plays out. So between this and Stranger Things, I'm going to have a very horror-filled, special effects heavy Christmas season, and I am very okay with that.
Awesome.
So that's Welcome to Derry, and probably Christian Ashley and some others on the show will talk about it more in depth in future episodes because there is a lot more to talk about here, but I know we're running short on time.
All right. We'll look forward to that.
Sounds good. All right. Well, you go, Glenn Powell. Before I get my Andy, did you get to see any of Glenn Powell's SNL on Saturday?
I have seen some of it. I have to finish watching it, but he is excellent. I have tried Chad Powers, and I was a little bit disappointed with that, but otherwise, Glenn Powell has not let me down yet.
I just love that his monologue. If you have not seen his monologue on Saturday, go watch that because my dad and brother are UPS drivers, and the story there about Mitch the UPS driver was fantastic. But getting to this topic, so The Running Man, directed by Edgar Wright. Andy, one of you and my all-time favorite directors. I could not wait for this movie, and so going into this one, I actually only recently read the novel and then saw the 80s movie. So it was one, I feel like the 80s movie was more like a little, I know it was popular at the time, but it's since become a little more cult classic. So I actually hadn't seen it growing up. I was unfamiliar with the story until really about a month or two ago. Again, I read the novel, watched the 80s movie, and this movie is a more faithful adaptation of the Stephen King novel. I know we're on a Stephen King kick here. It's also been a huge year for King. But yeah, this movie, well, Andy, have you read the novel and seen the original movie? I know you haven't gotten a chance to see this one quite yet, but you're going to next week.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my son to come back from college so I can watch it with him. I have not seen the original movie. I was a little young for the like peak Arnold 80s movie thing. That kind of passed me by. And I have not read the book either. Mostly excited about this on the back of Edgar Wright's previous work.
Sure. Well, and I'll give just a brief synopsis here is The Running Man is set in a dystopian sci-fi where poor people are oppressed. The media is all controlled by the government. And Glenn Powell plays Ben Richards, who is a man who desperate to mainly get treatment for his sick daughter. And him and his wife are working dead-end jobs, and they can't really find a way out of it. But in order to get the treatment necessary for his daughter, he goes on one of the game shows. They pretty much all entertainment, all media is just mindless game shows. And he tries to get on one of the safer ones and get a few $100. In this world, it's new dollars. And a fun little cameo they give to Schwarzenegger is they have Schwarzenegger's face on the currency, so on the new dollars. So that was really fun. But he ends up getting put on The Running Man, which is the most popular and also the most dangerous of the shows, where contestants have to survive a 30-day manhunt where not only are there trained killers hunting them, but everyone in the world can turn them in at any point, and they know their faces, and so they have to survive. And Ben Richards has to be resilient enough to beat the system, survive all the hunters, and find characters along the way to help him. So that's kind of this, and it's a very different feel from the 80s movie, because the 80s movie is very 80s action campy. This one again is a more faithful adaptation of the King novel, which he wrote under the pseudonym Richard Bachman. But I was, so I don't want to spoil it too much for this movie, because I know you're going to see it and I want more people to. I was surprised by the amount of negative reviews here, because while I don't think this is Edgar Wright's best film, I definitely don't think it's bad or anything. I had a blast with it. I do have mixed feelings on the ending, which I think you and I could talk about more in depth once you see it. Essentially, if I could do it without spoilers, I feel like they kind of had several endings in the last 5 minutes, and they could have stuck to one. Because the ending of the novel is very dark and bleak, and I kind of expected that a Paramount, big studio feature would not go that route. But nonetheless, they kind of throw out several endings in the last 5 minutes, and I thought it would have been, there's like one in particular I wish they had stuck with. But aside from that, I had a great time here. The writing is plunkier than a lot of Edgar Wright scripts, and because in particular with Scott Pilgrim and the Cornetto trilogy, I think he's a brilliant screenwriter. And, there was less of that quippy dialogue and storytelling that he's known for, but also the visualization here and the action sequences and the spectacle of it. I had a great time. There are still a lot of themes and a commentary here that was very applicable to today and that resonated. Does it go as hardcore as the novel? No, but it made for both a compelling sci-fi blockbuster and a good time. So I enjoyed it overall. I thought Glenn Powell was perfect for the role. Coleman Domingo, though, steals the show as the game show host here. He was phenomenal. But you also get kind of like vignettes with other characters. The best being Michael Cera is probably like the most Edgar Wright sequence in the entire film. That segment in particular is great. But yeah, I was really surprised by a lot of the reviews that were pretty harsh on this film. Again, it's not my favorite Edgar Wright movie, but I still had a great time with it. And while I would make tweaks to it, and I wish the script had some better dialogue, I still really enjoyed it, and I liked that it was, true to the book in more ways, much more so than the 80s movie. While I do enjoy the 80s movie, it's a very different from the original story. So yeah, I did like this one a lot. I'll be curious what you think of it when you see it next week.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it, and you haven't done anything to dissuade me about that, so that's good. As you were talking about Edgar Wright, and you mentioned SNL, it reminded me of they also, as a promo for his SNL appearance, they did a spoof of the Christopher Walken Fat Boy Slim music video.
Yeah.
So that's also worth digging up on YouTube, and it has a Texas switch that I'm not sure if it actually is a Texas switch, but it's certainly structured as a Texas switch, as a reference to one of those in the Fatboy Slim video, and also that's a signature. Not that he invented it, but that's something that Edgar Wright uses a lot in his films in creative ways. So I thought that was a nice little kind of crossover between the SNL bits and the film.
That was great. And also, one other thing I want to say, to where the reviews were saying that this just didn't feel like an Edgar Wright movie. From the title sequence at the beginning, I was like, this is Edgar Wright all over, because the sequence, let me know what you think when you see it, but the opening title sequence after the initial intro, it was very reminiscent of Baby Driver in a really good way. Like it felt like Baby Driver, that montage sequence where he's going through the street. In here, it's in a dystopian sci-fi setting, but it mirrored the visual lens there really well. And I thought the camera work was fantastic. The fight sequence, special effects, yeah, it felt very Edgar Wright to me. So I was a little confused by a lot of those reviews saying like, "Oh, this is just standard action movie." I strongly disagree with that.
Awesome. Maybe it just needed more Nick Frost.
Very cool. I guess so. I mean, Nick and Simon Pegg were not there, so, maybe if they had a cameo. But, yeah. But, anyway, go see Running Man. Andy, you and I will have to talk about it more once you do see it.
Sounds good.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, this has been great. I know it was a lot to cover tonight. And, Andy, before we go, do you have any recommendations, either from something we talked about tonight or anything else you want to throw out there?
Yeah. All right. Good question. I think I'll recommend Pluribus, as negative as I might have sounded about that first episode. And so I will encourage you, I will not only recommend it, but encourage you that, if you have similar misgivings about the pilot, push through, give the second or third episode a chance and see if it has more to offer to you. And maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised like I was. But yeah, I think that is, I think that will be the thing that people will be talking about, next year or in a couple of years. I think that will be the thing that will last the longest of all that we've seen here today. So yeah, I would get in on that conversation in the ground floor.
Definitely. It's already, a buzz online and everything. So definitely check it out. And then unsurprisingly, I'm going to recommend Frankenstein. But really, I recommend everything we talked about tonight. There was nothing I was overly negative on. I think there's a lot of cool stuff right now. So even though the world is crazy right now, we do have stuff going on in geek culture. So I can be thankful for that. Yeah. Awesome, Andy. Well, on that note too, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I know it's about a week away. Hope everyone is enjoying the holiday season. And thank you all so much for joining us. Again, please like, rate, review, subscribe. We're glad you're here. Support the show. Check out the show notes for links where you can support us. And Andy, thanks so much for joining me tonight. This was a blast. And remember, we are all a chosen full of wisdom of peace. Peace out, everyone.
Hello there, listener. This is Evan Garcia, and I just wanted to jump in here to remind you and to let you know of our Facebook groups and our Discord server. These are great communities where you can post and share memes and talk with the hosts, and we have votes and some polls for future episode topics and fun interactions with our host. So just wanted to remind you that we are focused on community with you listeners, and we love each and every one of you guys listening. Thank you, guys.
Hi friends, it's Laura here, and I just wanted to say thank you for listening to our show. Systematic Geekology is a part of a larger podcast network called the Anazal Podcast Network. Dummy for Theology is Joshua Noel's show discussing different theological topics from various perspectives and attempting to give people more questions than answers. My seminary life is Brandon Knight's show. It started as him going through what he was learning in seminary, and after he graduated, he's been doing independent studies and has a lot of fun series like on hermeneutics, Bonhoeffer Summer, and worship. And then Friday Night Frights is a monthly show with Christian Ashley and Joe Day. They have a vote on the Systematic Geekology Facebook group to choose a topic each month and discuss everything from cryptos to ghosts to aliens to serial killers and more. So we hope you'll give it a listen, and thanks for being part of what we're putting out there.